Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Professor Hamamoto. It is June 18, year 2023, 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. I hope you're doing wonderfully well on this Sunday afternoon. And today's topic is the body snatcher bust at Harvard Lucifersity. Yes, I coined a new term just for you. Um, we're going to cover a wide range of themes, topics, subjects. They intersect. Sometimes they might rub against each other and conflict. And honestly, I'm still trying to clarify my own thoughts, not on this specific incident. I kind of understand that this is business as usual at the university, but I'm still trying to clarify my thoughts on how this particular set of observations that I will be presenting support this notion of the Gothic, the American Gothic realities that I've been pursuing, specifically as it concerns the university. So today's talk, as many of them previously have done, supports this larger effort of mine to look at the university infrastructure and its results, right? Its findings, scientific and otherwise, social science, hard science, whether it may be in biology or in anthropology, management science, how it has really undermined the basis of the American Republic. And the university really needs to not only do some soul searching, but they have to take remedial action. Not tomorrow, not later, not with another fact-finding committee or investigation, a blue ribbon congressional report, or some fake people's representative, Josh Hawley, Ron DeSantis, whoever it might be, who are put out there to just kind of provide a little bit of feel good for the indie media. Notice I didn't even talk about CNN or Fox. I'm talking about the indie media. That's the big problem. Not only the pop-up pundits, but the people who've been around and just sucking up in the independent so-called media, who are sucking the energy, the oxygen out of what remains in our bodies, which we'll be talking about today. Maybe they're part of the extraction, the life extraction process. I'm beginning to think so. So this is another, to restate it in a different way, another attempt to try to define what I mean by the collegiate Gothic, beyond the well-known architectural style of these very spooky places of higher learning. Higher learning and lower morality, if there is even a semblance of morality that remains in these institutions. I haven't given up on them yet. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. All right. And you shouldn't either. It's too easy. That's what our so-called allies in indie media, that's what they want you to do. They say, oh yeah, defund the university, all those stupid professors, all those libtards, all those people doing their right. You see it cherry picked all the time on the Alex Jones show and whatever. And Glenn Beck is not so excessive, but you have these little selective edits of all the worst of the university or the college environment, which represents less than 1% of what's going on there. And I can speak with some authority on that. Most of you know my background, my professional background. And that's all part of the larger PSYOP in order for us, right, the American people, the people around all over the world who look at the United States as being a bastion, a center of advanced learning in the sciences, maybe even in the humanities, to just further their disgust, their disdain, self-disdain, and also from people abroad, their disgust with the American population. And it's indie media that's helping to feed into this with promoting in the guise of opposing it, promoting Pride Month and Anyway, I'm not going to belabor that point because I think more and more people are beginning to understand that the psyops is coming from quote unquote our side now, right? Full spectrum dominance. Remember that phrase? What applies to you and me as well. We are being full spectrum dominated. And that's one of the reasons why I went out of my way to promote Tal Warwick or Stixon Sexenheim, the 666. Not that I'm a big fan, but I respect what he does, and I want to encourage people of his millennial generation to exercise such independence of thought. And again, I had the usual numbnuts going in on his wardrobe or his appearance or his personality. All right. And I intentionally singled him out as an antidote, a sort of a subtle antidote to all the hype going around the firing and rehiring of, because it's the same people who are doing both firing and rehiring of one Tucker Carlson. Whatever you may think about him, he is a synthetic creation then and now. Okay. So, speaking of synthetic creations, let me delve more deeply into today's topic, that is the implications, the deeper implications. We're going to go deeper than 6 feet underground, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go deep into the crypt. We're going to go into the dark, necrotic heart and soul of the Gothic America of colonial times, right? Which I've alluded to in previous talks. So again, I'm not going to revisit that. If you're a tourist, if you're new to the Professor Hamamoto channel, which you should subscribe to immediately as I am speaking and put it on alert. And while you're at it, sign up for my Patreon because I have a lot of goodies, including about half a dozen articles supporting what I'm talking today that you could use if you're a college student or a grad student in particular, or if you're the adult parents of an adult who was in college, university, grad school, you could share this material with them. It's academic material. It's not something from Zero Hedge or Breitbart or, they're fine for what they do, but that's not, or Google, right? Because that's my world, and that's really the currency in the university setting. And whether you like it or not, you're going to have to play on that field, right? Just like, like it or not, you're going to have to play in the courts of law. We know that they're stocked with quote unquote Soros drones and they're compromised and all that. But cry all you want. Those are the realities. I didn't make up the rules, neither did you. I think rather than wringing our hands and just giving up in apathy, it behooves us to train even harder so that we can overcome the opponent here. And they're strong. They're well funded. But we have a lot going for ourselves. I don't need to really go into depth on that. It's called the truth, ladies and gentlemen. That's with a capital T. It's spelled TROOF, the truth, right? The other side has the truth. That's what they find in the little civilian law books and the ordinances. Well, we got the truth, and that's God's law. That's the truth. There's a big distinction. All right. I won't spend any more time on that. So we're going to talk about a lot of themes that I've been visiting over the past couple of years. I've been doing this almost 2.5 years now. My 2.5 year anniversary is coming up soon. It's consistent with the whole Gothic motif, as I've already alluded to. I've been reading a lot of classic American literature. It went over my head, honestly. It went over my head when I was a kid. And you too. You were reading H.P. Lovecraft, and you were reading Mark Twain, and you were reading Edgar Allan Poe and Fenimore Cooper and all these other greats, right? And I'm just talking about American authors. We were reading Sir Walter Scott, D.H. Lawrence, all these people. And try as they might, our teachers, or maybe we majored in English and at the college level, grad school, try as they may, our teachers, our instructors, our professors might not necessarily have given us the total picture. And that's where Professor Hamamoto hopes to intervene, or at least push the ball a little bit further up court. All right, so we can slam dunk on these mofos, right? Are you tired of being slam dunked on? Right? No, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's time to throw some elbows down in the low post. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna bring some truth today, and I'm gonna revisit some of these classic American authors, these themes, and I want to unpack further what I've been talking about over the past few months about maybe it's been more like year, 2 year, the Gothic concept. And again, if you're new to the channel, forget the Goths with the black uh, Buffy the Vampire Slayer fingernail polish and the black lipstick and the dyed black hair. That's not the goth I'm talking about, or Nine Inch Nails of 20 years ago when they were, it was supposed to be, Trent Reznor was supposed to be cutting edge, transgressive, like, oh yeah, into the dark side of the Tate LaBianca murders, and all that. You know the whole lore. He seems to be quieted down a lot about that. Right? A lot of it is due to maturity, right? So again, don't turn your back on these people whose wardrobe or their piercings or tattoos offend you, right? Because uh, there's something called, the lifespan that does something to you after a time. Uh, and really, the goal is to create a permanent division amongst we Americans along these generational lines. And we have to avert, and it's easily avertible. We have so much in common. And it's also, my talk is also, or my talks are also intended to bridge the false opposition that's been created between the left and the right ideologically in the US, or the Democrats and the Republicans, right? And I'm just sick of these people on our radio, supposed indie media. Oh, yeah, it's a Democrat. Blah, 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 blah. Come on now. Um, and if you're one of those people, don't watch this channel because you're going to be pissed off, and you're going to you're going to listen to, some radio jerk, or there are a lot of people, though, don't get me wrong, I won't call their names, who are on the conservative spectrum, though, who are open to the panorama of ideas in society. And so we don't want this balkanization, just political balkanization, this civil war, quote unquote, which is a phrase that's thrown around pretty easily. I think most people, most Americans especially, when faced with the prospects of a shooting war, American against American, would say, no, we're not we're sorry about that. We tried it once, right, during the age of Lincoln, thanks to the Rothschild agents in the Bank of England. And conservatives especially know that backstory, right? We have to teach the people that are being alienated from us, those who are on the left, who we have a lot in common. We're against corporatism. We're against the biohegemony. We're against the environmental commodification, the degradation. We have so much in common that we can work on. So let's pledge to do that as we move towards 2024, right? And it's beginning to move in that direction. That's another reason why I brought in Mr. Tarl Warwick to get his independent verification. A lot of people in his generation, his cohort, as they call it, are moving in that direction. All right. So let's move with, they're moving in the right direction. Okay. What is not moving in the right direction are these sclerotic state institutions. You look at even their buildings. I was going to put a pic up there for you to look at the Harvard Medical School building. It looks like a giant crypt. Man, that would be just so demoralizing if I was a med student, or one of the adjuncts, professors of medicine, or even a pharmaceutical rep. No, I take that back. Pharmaceutical reps, and they're always the best, most handsome, and the most good-looking people around, to go there and try to seduce the doctors and so on. It would be so depressing to be around that. Look, it looks like the Skull and Bones crypt on Yale campus. magnified by, thousands of square feet. Anyway, if you look at all these old medical schools, they probably have the same exterior. Maybe we need to rethink the architecture of these edifices, or at least examine them. Collegiate Gothic, there you go. You can start on that. So anyway, as you have heard, I won't really go into the specifics of this article. And by the way, the person who illustrates today's talk, the pic there, with the little piercings in the facial adornment, that wasn't a model. That was a individual who was arrested as part of this ring of body snatchers working out of Harvard University Medical School, right? And I'll tell you in advance, and you probably can have assumed this already, is that Harvard Medical School is feigning ignorance, like they had nothing to do with it. They had this loose cannon who was selling bodies out the back door, so to speak. It's more like he was taking them home in his personal vehicle, transporting to his this is in the article, transporting to his private home, and then meeting people who are part of a larger ring in order to sell, quote unquote, this is their term, oddities, medical oddities, which just means body parts, including skulls and brains. And by the way, don't worry about it. I'm not going to talk about Yale Skull and Bones. If you're on that level, you're either a newbie or you like hearing the same information over and over again. All right. So I'm not, it's part of our culture. It's part of our Gothic culture. It's part of intelligence agency. You've heard that time and time again. So can we move on? Can we stop Googling and start doing some original speculation on it, which is going to take place here today? And I promise you, it's going to be good. I might be wrong, but I'm throwing some observations. Well, they're based on observation, but they're speculative comments that, who knows, a brighter mind than mine might be able to start empirically doing the filling in the background there and coming out with some validating arguments to my speak. So anyway, that's by way of warning you that I reserve the right to present hypotheses that may sound off the wall, or to engage in speculation here. I'm not a repeater. I'm not a Googler. Okay, my profession was professor before they threw me out of the illustrious University of California for lecturing them what I'm doing here for free on TubeU, unless they bench me, right? They haven't deplatformed me yet. By the way, I'm also on Rumble. And also, I don't give a flying you-know-what if they do get rid of me on all those platforms, right? Because I will find a way to communicate to you. I will find a way. Just like the Marquis de Sade found a way to get his sick, perverted, Gnostic, decadent, probably Rosicrucian, Freemasonic version of the world, and more specifically, sexuality and human relations, out of the Bastille. He managed to get his material out. I will get my material out there. And by the way, we're going to talk about the Gnostic vision presently, because I'm beginning to piece it together and seeing that American culture and society and civilization, and by extension, other parts of the world, the English-speaking world and non-English-speaking world, but definitely in America, is infected by the virus, not of CRT, that's temporary, or GLBTQ Pride Month, that's temporary. That's being thrown out by the larger Gnostic hegemony that's taken over in the psychotherapeutic realm and university counseling. The therapists that are running rampant there, they're hiring more psychotherapists at the university, and that's probably true at Harvard as well. Then they're hiring tenure track professors, right? And they're all Gnostics, they're New Agers. And that, I know that's a broad term, but that include everything but prescribing or ketamine or DMT, or out-of-body experiences, because in the Gnostic tradition, the body is base and human existence is an illusion, right? And of course, that's the exact worldview, that's the exact ontology that the Luciferian forces want to see promulgated throughout American society and the world, so that they can affect the end game in their body snatching, soul snatching attempts. All right, I'm getting ahead of myself. And by the way, I should tell you that just before going on air, I've realized that there's a new DVD being produced by co-producer, written by Steve Quayle. Okay, whatever you think about him, he's an interesting writer, and again, he's throwing out hypotheses, speculation, ideas. Some of them empirically validated, I will admit, but some of them far out. Right? We don't have to agree on everything. Right? It's not required. We don't need 100% orthodoxy. In fact, it's better that we disagree on many points, so that we can better refine and hone our arguments, right? So let's leave aside what prejudice you might carry with you. But he's got a new DVD out. I am going to purchase. Well, I already did purchase it, and it should come early next week. And I'm thanking my Patreon supporters, the Patronistas, right now for allowing. It's kind of expensive. It's $38 with tax, but I'm going to get every penny out of my and your investment, and I'm going to review it here in a future podcast. So I'm just kind of giving the heads up there, but it's appropriate to this talk here today because he is talking about alien DNA, and especially the alien DNA that supposedly came together with the pharaonic, right? The Egyptian pharaoh line, how it came together with their DNA. And if you want to look at it further, a lot of the royal houses claim descent from the pharaohs of old, of ancient Egypt, including the current occupant of the United Kingdom, right? They trace their lineage there. So whether you believe it or not is really secondary. What's more important is that the so-called rulers of the earth, planet Earth, and its resources, including us, we useless eaters, right? They believe it. All right. So, yeah, might be stupid, might be silly, but that they're proceeding on the basis that we are just the cattle, that we're just drones, not the ones that fly around, but the worker bees. That they can do with what they will. All right. So that's going to be coming, that DVD. All right. So let's get into it. Some specifics. You don't need to memorize this information. There will be no quiz at the end of this talk here, but a guy named Cedric Lodge, I want to put that out into the noosphere, as Teilhard de Chardin called it. We can use the noosphere too. We can put it into the Akashic record, whatever these New Agers, right? These pseudo-Christians are talking about, like Jesuit, like the Teilhard de Chardin, right? We'll use the noosphere. Put Cedric Lodge, age 55. It's out there now. It's on TubeU. What could be more Gnostic than the TubeU experience? You're watching a bunch of images and mostly BS, maybe myself included. I don't know. Maybe I'm a hologram. Maybe I'm just part of a combination, an embodiment of pure information that's appearing on your screen right at this very moment. You can tell I've been reading a lot of PKD, Philip K. Dick, which I'll have a lot to say about, not only in this talk, but in future episodes of the Professor Hamamoto continuing saga. Right, because I'm becoming quite disenchanted with his writing, and by extension, of course, himself and his vision. And I'll tell you, that's what they call themselves. The PKD fanboys call themselves dickheads. So this is a trigger warning to all the dickheads. I'm not down with your boy. I'm sorry about it, man. I think the only thing that really allowed him to thrive is the fact that he hung on to the last vestige of his Episcopalianism, right? Otherwise, he would have he would have been doomed, right? And that's really what the source of most of his fiction is, of what I'm reading. And when I say I'm reading it, I'm reading his oeuvre. I'm reading his book. Most of them are back in print now, and I'm reading the criticism. Here's another one. Thank you, Patreon people, for allowing me to buy these expensive academic books. It's called In Pursuit of Valis, which stands for Vast Artificial Intelligence System. I think I'm mangling it a bit, but it's like our surveillance system. They said, "Oh, he's so far-reaching and far." I think Philip Dick was getting handed little jackets, file folders. Like, you're going to write about this, and that's for a future talk, because I've been checking into his literary agency, the Scott Meredith Literary Agency, and found out that he was probably part of the cultural Cold War, as Francis Stoner talked about it. And they use science fiction as well as movies and television and literary fiction, so-called, in order to get their psyops across. Science fiction's a natural. But anyway, I'm starting to stir out point here, but I'm just giving the dickheads of the world, and they're multiplying. They're multiplying because of the concerted effort to promote him. And that's not saying you shouldn't read him. He's probably one of the more important writers of the 20th century, moving into the 21st century. But there is a price to be paid for that, right? And I don't know if you want to pay that price. I don't. And that price is the human soul. And he was fighting for his soul and all these. Anyway, this book's called In Pursuit of Valis, Selections from the Exegesis. Most of you know what it's like, thousands of pages of his personal notebooks, which weren't intended for publication, that are being released. There was one volume already released. This is a selection by his first, maybe not the first, but he's one of the early important biographers of P.K. Dick, Lawrence Sutin, who I read a long time ago. I've been reading him, but through clouded perceptions, or incompletely, since the 70s, when I first read about him in Rolling Stone magazine by the reporter, the journalist, who later became his literary executor, right? So this is not new to me, but the insights that I'm bringing to you are now informed by my ability to fully contextualize the threat of the P.K. Dickian Gnostic ideology that's being promulgated in the popular culture, right? He's become cool, and if anything's cool, I want to go in the opposite direction, right? Because it probably means that it's misdirection, it's false, or maybe I'm just a contrarian. I don't know, but at least I put the work in, and the dickheads haven't. Some of the academic types have, and of course, they have their whole professional reputations riding on their arguments. So they can never abandon or move off the square, that their little patch of territory that they're trying to defend against other academic dickheads. That's how the university world works. And that's why it's so conservative. And that's why we have scandals that come out of the esteemed Harvard Medical School, where it turns out they're trafficking human body parts. And I say, oh, surprise, surprise. No, I say it comes from the Gothic American culture and American. It's the whole history of genocide, occupation. And now the end game is that the American people itself, the people who reside within the borders of the American Republic, are part of the target for extermination, bio-extermination. Okay, I think people are beginning to finally understand that was the end game all along. So Cedric Lodge, 55, former manager of Harvard's morgue. I don't think the med school or the morgue is in Cambridge. I think it's in Boston. All right. Or maybe it's in Dorchester. I don't know, but it's not in Cambridge. But anyway, he was the former manager. Why was he former? He was fired. Guess what? He's been working there since 1996. That's why I think that the administration, the higher level administration, probably knew about it and might have been involved. And I'm not saying the current dean of the medical school was involved, right? but I think he needs to be put on administrative leave at minimum. And there needs to be investigation of the dean of Harvard Medical School. And perhaps they should start after they do their due process, right? The Harvard Corporation, which is a private corporation, by the way, it's like a sovereign government within a government. After they scrutinize it, they'll say, "Well, sorry, but going to have to let you go, man. It's a scandal what you've been doing for I don't know how it's going to play out, but that's my one of my concrete solutions that are not found in these articles. Accountability. And I read the little letter that the dean of the Harvard Law Medical School wrote apologizing for this mistake. It's always a mistake. But if you want to look at the history, and it's available online free of charge, so you don't have to take my word for it. There's plenty of popular and academic literature about the whole history of grave robbing in the English-speaking world. And it seems to be a cultural universal, by the way. It's taken place in the Arab world. It's taken place in different parts of Asia. You name it. I don't have to talk about the 4 quadrants of the world. It's one of those universals. And that maybe that's one of the reasons why, I'm just speculating, why there's burial rituals and a protocol and prescriptions, are etched in stone for most societies, maybe orally, but sometimes it's written down in scripture that thou shalt not do this and this and this, and thou shalt treat bodies and the dead and the departed and their body parts in a certain prescribed fashion, overseen by ecclesiastical specialists. All right, so this is not something that's new. So the Harvard people, sure, after all, in one of the bastions of I'm sorry, I said bastards. One of the bastions of higher learning in America and a beacon even in the world, they cannot plead ignorance. And also their sister institutions in the Ivy League, right, including the University of Pennsylvania. It turns out that this guy Casper Winstar, or maybe I'm mispronouncing it more. Maybe it's probably more Winstar, right? Maybe the Philadelphia main line would say Winstar, but I say Winstar. That's how it's spelled, W-I-N-S. And he had a rat named after him. How cool is that? Why? Because he was totally into vivisection of all kinds of creatures, whether they be rats or humans, right? Remember that movie with Ernest Borgnine in there, where all the rats take their revenge, right? Remember the social science experiment on the rat utopia? Remember all the millions of rats that have given our lives in medical experimentation? Do you remember the recent incident where the body of Annie Lee, a doctoral candidate at Yale Medical School, was found behind one of the false walls at one of the laboratories around the Yale campus? Because one of the people there, who was kind of like a Willard character, thought she was abusing the rats. Okay, that's a true story here, right? And when I read articles like this, all this information and memory comes back to me, and I put it together. That's what I'm trying to share with you, my addled reconstruction of events that I'm synthesizing. Okay, Wistar, his name was Casper. Maybe he's the original Casper, the friendly ghost. And of course, we're familiar with the Wistar name, University of Pennsylvania Medical School, in conjunction with all the different types of quote unquote remedies for human ailments. I'm being ironic here because I don't want to be struck down by TubeU, right? You know what I'm talking about. All right. They're complicit in what we've been seeing over the past 3 years. But there's a history behind that point. His name's Wistar. Okay. So anyway, at his level, and of course, he was probably came out of some sort of secret society based in Philadelphia, probably Freemason or Rosicrucian, but he, a merchant, whatever, right? They said, okay, we need to control the human population through medical science, and I'm going to invest this so that my progeny can maintain dominion over all the useless eaters in perpetuity. All we have to do is fund this notion that we're going to die unless we impart this specialized shamanic information and pharmacopoeia to their ill-educated selves. Otherwise, they're going to die. Right? That's Wister. I'm just bugging out on what went through his imagination, him and his cohort. Anyway, let me finish up from the article that's available there for you to check out. 7 people in 5 states. That's why I say it was a program. That's why I say it's a conspiracy. Not me, right? Call me conspiracy theory, but here's a conspiracy by any definition, even by those academics, by the way, who singled me out. Even at UC Davis, there's like 2 of them. One was in the sociology, and the other was in the history department, that they were assigned in order to defame me and put me through investigations resulting in administrative leave on my part for talking about these types of issues to students who were being recruited into this hellish demonic system of evil. So, all right. So it's a topic that's near and dear to me. It's just not purely of intellectual interest to me. So let me finish the sentence here because I'm running out of time. 7 people in 5 states, including Lodge, were charged with conspiracy and interstate transport of stolen goods by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So far, Pauly has agreed to plead guilty. Okay, but they didn't put his picture up there. They put the guy with the tattoos to imply that it's aberrant, this activity, rather than normal or routine amongst these medical institutions. And they go through some hand wringing and soul searching about medical ethics. And they'll bring in Professor so-and-so from here, Professor so-and-so, and do a blue ribbon panel. And by the way, Harvard is going to be doing this self-study. And you know that the results are going to be like something right out of the U.S. Attorney General's office investigating the Russia Gate deal, or a cocked up set of indictments, 37 in total, against Orange Man. You know what these self-studies, sort of self-replicating, self-referential entities do, right? We are aware enough to understand that. And I'm saying this because this is one of my concrete proposals, and that's to bring in citizens from outside the university. They could be from the local area. They can be from Boston. They could be from Dorchester. They can be from Cambridge. They could be from the North End. It doesn't matter. In fact, it should be an everyday person who goes to Catholic Mass on Sundays. And that person, or one or more, should be part of this fact-finding committee on what was going wrong at Harvard Medical School, where they're practicing as modern grave robbers. By the way, back in the day, they were called resurrectionists, right? Back in England, because this is an Anglo-American phenomenon. It was going on in Scotland, in England, in Wales, throughout the British Isles, and it migrated into the colonies. And that's why when I talk about the Gothic tradition, it's continuous. Just like the banking system is Anglo-American, right? Their occultic system, their Luciferian worldview and behavioral patterns also migrate, are intrinsic or bound up with the political economic system that from which we are suffering today. All right. And by the way, there's a Professor Richard, God, he's a leftist. He has his own YouTube channel. He does a whole talk on zombie capitalism, and he's a leftist. And there are these liberals and even conservative economists or special economic historians who will use that phrase as well, zombie capitalism, the undead, right? And these are corporate entities that are supported by the military and the state. It's called corporate. It's called fascism, corporate fascism, right? And that is what we're suffering from today in our inflationary economy, which is always on the verge of going bust, but never seems to. Or a lot of it's fear porn, coming from the people I mentioned at the top of the show here. Right? Oh, the de-dollarization, buy gold, buy storable foods. You know, by the way, I have some gold, tiny bit. I have a little silver, tiny bit. So I don't have any Bitcoin or crypto, and I have plenty of storable food. Okay, yeah. So I'm not saying that's bad advice. I'm just saying that it's not going to save anybody if we just listen to all these fear porn mongers on indie media. Forget about CNN, Fox. We know about them, but we are less willing to say to understand, to fully understand that it's people like, I don't need to name their names. You're probably, if you're watching this channel, you're not watching them typically often, anymore. You've outgrown them, or now you have come to the realization that they are part of the psyops, working for the same employers. All right, so they finally fired this character, and a couple of other people who don't work for the university were rounded up and they were fired. So anyway, they'll be rolled up, but the system, pardon me for my skepticism, will roll on. Unless we intervene. Also, by the way, not only should this fact-finding commission or committee at Harvard Medical bring in people from outside, the community, people who go to church, for example, and believe in God and not Lucifer. However, sometimes churches are run by Luciferians, as we know, but that's another talk, right? But within their own academic world, they need to bring in people from religious studies, from comparative literature, people who have an understanding of the occult in American society, right? People in the English department. I was reading this introduction to Edgar Allan Poe, right? Published by Oxford World Classics, which to me is the best one, right? The close runner-up is the Penguin versions of these classics, which are in the because they have good introductory essays. They have good notes. They're annotated. But the one I read on Edgar Allan Poe was written by a guy in the English department at UC Davis. So they're not all bad. This guy really understood what Edgar Allan Poe was about in the framework of this Gothic. It's not an imaginary. It's a realities. Why do you think his stories were so eerie? Why were they so spooky? Why were all these hauntings? And then when you get into H.P. Lovecraft, my gosh. And why do you think, I'm just talking about some of the more well-known authors, right? Everybody read Poe and Lovecraft when they were kids, and I'm suggesting that we should reread them now as adults. Why do you think there were so many doctors in these books, right? Even before, prior to him, Dr. Victor Frankenstein, or Frankenstein, however you like, in Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus, written by Percy Bysshe Shelley, not his wife, as we were being told. And who was Percy Bysshe's personal physician? Dr. John Polidori, who's a doctor, who wrote a book called Vampire. By the way, he wrote that story, that novella, Vampire, that same session where Mary Shelley supposedly wrote Frankenstein. That's probably mythology, but he was there. He was part of that circle. The point is, why do you think there's so many medical doctors who are in this literature? And why do you think there's so many professors who keep cropping up in all these spooky movies? Thank you, my Patreon people. It was the hand of God that led me to stuff that I didn't want to watch, because now it's coming to folks within the popular culture. We're seeing the ghouling of America, Gouling, the undead, right? The zombie apocalypse, the recombination DNA, the mRNA, the transhumanism. It was all being foretold to us by these Sabbatean Frankists who emigrated from Vienna and Berlin, and some of them from Poland, right? Or what is now Ukraine, right? The producers. This is the haunting grounds of your hussars that later set up the mindfuck operations in Malibu, California, in Los Angeles, what's now called Hollywood, right? The man who haunted himself. To the Devil, a Daughter. This is a British production, Hammer, but we're talking about Anglo-America. Demons of the Mind. Wonder Woman, Professor Marston. Terrible movie, but the story, he taught at Harvard. Harvard psychologist came up with a Wonder Woman. She was into bondage. Yeah, that's why she carried the rope. I gave a talk on that. By the way, I just picked this up out of a box that I was going to put in the garage because I've studied these movies. I don't know what to do. I think I'm going to auction these movies because I need some more capital so I can buy more. Sci-fi classics: Tarantula, The Mole People, The Incredible Shrinking Man, The Monolith Monsters on the Campus. There's always these professors, these crazy mad professors who are running around creating these abortions, these abominations, these crimes against nature. And we were watching them in our PJs on TV. Right? These reruns, the television genre I'm talking about. Or sometimes we go to the theater, the drive-in movie theater. Tales of Terror. Right? Starring one of my Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, and Basil Rathbone. Produced and directed by Roger Corman. I've been telling you, we got to check into Roger, baby. Oh, yeah, his name keeps coming up. Oh, and he gets a pass. Why? But he's at the center of all this stuff. I'm telling you. Vincent Price, Peter Lorre. Oh, yeah. M. The beast with the five fingers when he came to America. He didn't speak a lick of English when he came to America. And, of course, Basil Rathbone, who you better know him as one of the, maybe, for my money, the best of the Sherlock Holmes people. Benedict Cumberbatch is not a bad Holmes, or Sherlock Holmes in my book. By the way, checking his background, he's up there. He's a toffee. He's upper class British. Yeah, Peter Lorre, Tales of Terror. And From Beyond the Grave. Oh, yeah. Terror to delight worshippers of the macabre. The 4-movie horror unleashed collection, The Blob. These are all low budget. Christine. Fright Night. The Seventh Sign with Demi Moore. Oh, The Island of Terror with Peter Cushing. One of my favorites. Along with, of course, the great Christopher Lee. Oh, Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. The 4-movie horror collection, The Black Cat, The Raven, The Invisible Ray, Black Friday. All these mad professors. The Dunwich Horror, based on H.P. Lovecraft. I gave a talk on this. I think this got me booted off for a few sessions off of TubeU. Because I was talking about Sandra Dee, how she went from a sacrificial virgin on Gidget movies to the sacrificial non-virgin in the Dunwich Horror, Sandra Dee, who every teenager in the 1950s just adored and loved. She was all, she was all that. Starring, of course, Dean Stockwell, the boy with the green hair. Right, based on H.P. Lovecraft, and guess what? Where does what's his name, Whately? He goes to Miskatonic University to look at the manuscript, of only which 2 or 3 exist in the world. Right, the Necromanicon. Sorry if I'm pronouncing, like necrosis, like the dead, like corpses. Okay, are you seeing a pattern here? H.P. Lovecraft knew what was going down, and he was in these. So was Poe. Poe was in these intellectual circles. Then and they were feeding this back to us like a message in the bottle, but also as popular entertainment that continues to perform that function today. except I am recasting it in a different light, and I'm updating it and showing us how this part of the popular culture has been leading us collectively to the brink of extinction, into the transhuman, or not extinction. According to Philip Dick, we're going to be incorporated into a pure information world. Right. This is what I'm getting from his book of Velas and some other ones. This is a real Gnostic notion. And I know I'm going to alienate not just the dickheads, but also the people who absorbed Carl Gustav Jung. It's all Jungian. Freud, long ago, decades ago, has been displaced by Carl Jung, whether people know it or not. All right. So I'm up against the Jungian establishment. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. What doesn't matter? It doesn't matter that I'm outnumbered. People would say, well, how can you? I don't really have a choice. Okay, yeah. Lionel Barrymore, right? That's Drew Barrymore's grandfather, maybe great-grandfather. Marco the Vampire. Boris Karloff again in Fu Manchu. Right. The perennial Asian Chinese, the indispensable enemy, as one writer put it, who keeps being resurrected, just like right now by Alex Jones, the Chicom this. The Isle of the Dead, Bedlam, on and on. Ursula Andress, Peter Cushing's in this one. And of course, the most horrific of all, how did this get in the pile? It's called Shots. It's a documentary by John Potash. And the subtitle is Eugenics to Pandemics. All right. Truthfully, that's what I was leading up to. I hope you understand my little trick, my pedagogical trick to pull you along to the real lesson that I'm trying to communicate to you. All right. I'm not done yet. So please bear with me. I'm not even close. I haven't even shown the clips yet. Darn. Okay. We talked about zombie capitalism, cinema, museum displays, right? Not just Harvard Medical School. I told you in a few talks ago about how they've taken the name off the Anthropological Museum at the University of California, right? The Berkeley, the flagship campus, Berkeley, right? 100 miles from me. I'm at Davis. I'm 100 miles or 90 miles, 80 miles east of Berkeley, because we used to be the agricultural station, which now they do all the genetically modified crops and all the herbicides and the pesticides and the chimera animals, half animal, half human, and all the different V's, right? And Dr. Robert Malone comes out of there as well. On and on. Edward Teller, that was his mirror institution, right? Because he knew that genetics was the next direction to go to. He wasn't about boom, boom as such. He was only interested in the hydrogen bomb so far as it could genetically scramble the genetics of the Japs as the original test subjects in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, right? That was his Azarian, his Sabbatean intervention, his Frankist intervention on that level, okay? And that's going on today in the U.S. You've got one of those pocket monsters right with you. You might be watching me on one of your pocket monsters. It's called the so-called smartphone, the iPhone. 5G, baby, ionizing radiation right to your gray matter. Talk about zombification. Talk about the living dead. Gosh, cadaverism. My God. So we went to, and you know that L. Kroeber got his name. He was the founding anthropologist of the department there. He got his name taken off because he was keeping all these specimens from Native America. And they're still trying to, the natives are still trying to get the bones back, the desecrations, because that's what this is about. This is about the degradation of humanity and desecration more immediately of graves, of burial sites, of sacred places, and defilement, right? Just like abortion, right? This is the people that are not yet born. And at the other end of the spectrum, this defilement, the degradation of people who had a life and died. Do you understand that? I don't think Harvard University wants to understand that, because they're all part of this Luciferian program that needs to be capped. The portals out of which these monsters are coming at us, and they're interdimensional. That's what Los Alamos is really about. Yeah, they did the A bomb. They didn't hydrogen, but they did Fat Boy and Little Man, right? We know that. But did you know that in parallel to that, they were also doing interdimensional research at Los Alamos? Yes. That's not me saying that. Look at the book by Gordon Thomas, right? And other people. There's more. There's going to be more material that's coming out there. And of course, there's CERN, an example that you might be more familiar with. And of course, Project Blue Book or Blue Beam. I mean, all of it, the ufology, all of that is coming to us at the same time. These are all about entities. This is about pure information that's being beamed into us, our minds, our lives, our automobiles, and we're going to merge with pure information. This is Philip Dick. Philip Dick, the writer. I don't know about Philip Dick, the person. I think he remained with Jesus. That's why after he died at age 53, he's probably in heaven as opposed to being in hell, because he hung on to, for dear life, to his Christian faith, because he was being tested constantly. He was being attacked, physically, literally, and spiritually attacked from a very young age. It's all in the biographies, right? So, whereas his message, Philip Dick, the writer's message, is being, I think, misconstrued and deliberately being used and exploited for these Gnostic hallucinati. That's my term, by the way. I coined it. Who are down in Silicon Valley. Those are all the dickheads down there. All the fanboys who grew up on Game Boy. Well, you know what? You're the one that's being played. You're not playing Game Boy. Game Boy's playing you. You understand that? And all you video heads and all you 8-bit music freaks, right? You're Super Mario, all right? I mean, I kind of understand and appreciate the aesthetics of that world, of that subculture, which is huge, all right? Don't get me wrong, but it's not I'm sticking with text. I'm sticking with literature, right? Because someone's going to keep you straight. Someone's going to have to check you. That's me and others. Because we're not going to let you game heads rule over us. You're not going to be involved in some sort of live action role play over my life. Because my life is not a role play. And it's not live action. It's live. You got it? You dig? See how all this this noise, which is being mistaken for signal, has been beamed at us from the dumb phone. Started with the television. That's why I wrote 2 academic monographs, books on television, because I knew this was really the beginning of it. You understand? Okay. I'm kind of running out of time, but let me, and I'll go into, I'll go in on C.G. Jung at another time. Let me show you pop grave diggers. Okay, I just came across this video, and just so you won't be triggered, this video has been, to my satisfaction, has been sussed out and vetted out as being a fake. Right. I mean, the video is real, but it is a mock-up, sort of like some of these scare tapes that I got. So this is one of them, but it's on YouTube. But maybe it isn't, or maybe it's staged, but reflects the realities of what these contemporary grave robbers are about. So let's just take a brief look at it. I'm not going to trigger you. We'll just watch a few seconds of it.
around this big. All right, if it's a male, you might have lines like that from the baldness. Okay. Now, so what you do is you grab it around here. You grab it here and peel it back like that. Okay, peel it back. All right, and it'll pull off. It'll make a disgusting sound. So let's say it's someone important, right? All right, so you take a sample of the say that mustache, right? Okay, so you to make sure that
And that little piece is called Body Snatching for Morons. So if you need a tutorial, watch that. And again, take it for what it is. There's another video that says that this is a fake, and he supposedly it's credible to me, whether it's staged or not. It's highly credible. And here's another person, and there's a dual purpose in this. I want you to check him out. If you're in search of material that's a little bit higher level than you'll find on YouTube or TubeView, then look at the esoterica or esoteric culture. This guy has a PhD in religious studies, but I find his work of being high quality. My only problem with him is that one time he showed up in his real uniform, right? He was still wearing, rocking the yarmulke and all that, but he showed up in his real uniform. It was like he's all totally into death metal and black metal and Swedish death metal, right? So that's going to tell me, hey, take his material with a grain of salt. And again, this is not about his musical taste. This is about his headspace. Okay, he may be good in talking about necromancers, right, and esoterica, but he may be way off base when it comes to matters of the soul and of the spirit. I don't know. I don't know him. I just can go with what he presents to us.
Image of the sorcerer, or the necromancer more specifically, is one of a perhaps singular character at the very fringes of society. They don black robes with a cowl to hide their face, and they carry about in tombs, crypts, and cemeteries, and they especially eschew the religious sensibilities of their age. They pore over vast tomes filled with strange diagrams, incantations in tongues older than memory, and they seek to control forces beyond the very powers of life and death, which exist at the limits of madness and soul-rending ferocity.
Okay, this guy, his name is Dr. Justin Sled. He also has sort of an arch sense of humor, dark sense. Because you can see the graphics. It's his, right, the necromancer with his undead minions, which means fanboys, I guess, of Dragon and Dungeon fanboys. Right? He doesn't really mean that, but he's saying that, hey, this stuff has migrated into the popular culture in more ways than one. Okay, let's see, which one is this? I can't remember. Let's see.
The zombie is an image, a film generated over.
This guy, if I may say so, is one of those financed pop-up pundit boys that mommy and daddy bought him a channel. He's probably a frustrated wannabe actor or comedian, just like a lot of, there's a lot of retread comedians out there who are supposedly doing news analysis, right? Joe Rogan, Steven Crowder, any of these guys who are slick and know how to keep an audience engaged. Most of them are retread comedians, but they're wildly popular because people do not understand that there's different types of talents and skills that's out there. Do you understand? They're comedians, they're entertainers. I mean, that was the argument in trial that Alex Jones was making. He's, I'm an entertainer, I'm a comedian. And he is, to a certain extent, he is playing a role. And that role has become more evident as we go along and as he drifts further away from his roots, his origins, back in the old days when he was on public access TV or before he even had his own channel, which I used to watch. So I can, I could see the descent. there, or action, or the revelation. Anyway, this is one of those smart ass dudes who I like to dump on them as a pop-up punt. They're not all like that. Some of them are like Tara Warwick, who's organic. You know that because he got deplatforming. He doesn't have any of these massive numbers so far as subscribers. This guy's finance. He's a pop-up pundit. So he's got this sort of smart-ass, advanced grad student type of attitude about, about zombies, right? It's all written for him. He's an actor. There are professional writers who are now doing YouTube, especially now, because I don't think they're covered by the Writers Guild West or East. There's a strike going on right now. There's going to be a problem with the pipeline of shows and movies. Of course, they've stockpiled a lot of material, so don't worry about the writers or the producers. Could be fake. But anyway, a lot of them are coming to YouTube, and this is an example of it. And again, I'm just telling you, because if you haven't figured it out right on your own, you're watching television. This is TubeView. It's tubed us. Where does it come from? The boob tube, the Lamati, and it's circling back to its origins. You understand? It's a miracle that someone like me, a rank amateur, is even on here. And thank you very much for watching the live stream and supporting me. So let's take a look at this ass clown here.
Over the last 100 years or so.
We'll start from the beginning.
The zombie is an image, a film surface generated over the last 100 years or so. But what's it an image of? What does it represent? That's the interesting interpretive question. The first zombies were controlled by sorcerers, like this dude. Today, they are bodies controlled by viruses, controlled by machines, controlled by a giant space starfish, or, controlled by sorcerers. Now, monsters come in various packages. For example, some infiltrate society to destroy it from within. Vampires, communists, lizard people, they look like us so as to subvert society undetected.
Okay, the lizard people was a knock against our own David Icke. And I know he has his detractors as well, but in his favor, I think he brought a lot of people into the tent, which is good. Same with Alex Jones, right? And whether they outgrew him or they whatever talk that goes, smack talk that goes around, just take it with a grain of salt. But because this ass clown wants to be the new, the new David Icke, right? These are the replacement, right? Nick Fuentes, they're all, I have nothing against the youth, right? I want to promote a Tall Warwick, unless he's a Luciferian. I really don't know what his politics are now or his beliefs. And I'm seeing that starting to happen. And I don't want these guys to take over just because they're supported by corporations who said, okay, TubeView is how we're going to be able to outflank the budding awareness of independent thinkers, which is you watching this, right? This is how they're trying to, as part of the Psy Wars, the PsyOp. Okay, so let's continue with the other end of the spectrum. As I alluded to earlier, this is from Sky TV, very slick production. I don't know what smack talk is on them, Sky TV. I read a lot of the gossip that swirls around too. You could put it in the comments. You can put it in the live stream. I don't know. I read some of it. I follow some of it's useful. I don't know. It's part of the rules of engagement, I guess. But this is Sky TV, and this is what you associate with Tom Horn. He's written some great books, especially his books on Petrus Romanus, the last pope, his prophetic books, and it's coming from a distinctly Christian prophetic tradition. And this is a prelude, or actually a announcement of this new film on the ancient alien DNA melding with that of human beings. And I don't know if I buy the argument yet, but I'm taking it seriously. Like I said on the previous talk, I try to look at everything. If I don't, it's probably my own ignorance or inattention or lack of time. But I'm 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 trying to survey the entire realm of what's out there in the popular culture. That's what a cultural forensics person like me, a certifiable expert, right? Not a pop-up pundit, someone with a track record, a good one too. Far better than that of pop-up pundit Professor Jordan Peterson, who was recently exposed by Fantastic Polly as a globalist mouthpiece. Check her out. Or you can subscribe to my Patreon and look at the little excerpt and the link to that if you want to do that. And I gave a talk on him. People got pissed off at me. I don't care. I don't care. Right? I'm trying to get at the truth. You dig? All right. So keep that in mind when we see this piece, this introduction to the new documentary by Steve Quayle. And I've read most of the book. Expensive, big format, nice coated paper, giants, Nephilim, all of it. I'm familiar with it. Like I told you, I like to see what's out there. Thank you, my patronesses, for making possible. It costs a lot of money laying out the coin to watch this, but I'm going to return the value to you when I review this document. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's coming on Tuesday.
Technological advances in science are right now, as we speak, pushing the genetic boundaries of what it means to be human. Many experts in the field of genome editing believe we already possess the ability to begin rewriting the God-given code that makes up our DNA in order to engineer what they believe could be an improved, hybrid species of human being. Where will the hubris of man lead us? Is science opening the gates of hell? Today's guest will weigh in on this and much more. Hello and welcome to Skywatch TV. Man, oh man, if you missed the last few weeks, you simply must go back to the archives. Before we dive into today's panel, let me introduce our special guest. He's an Air Force veteran, author, radio show commentator, podcaster, and public speaker. He's the writer of Gen 6 Productions, Mega Drought, and the Lies of Men and Gods. Please welcome Mr. Daniel Holdings. I really mean this sincerely. These last few weeks talking about UFOs, the Vatican's interest in following the disclosure of UFOs, these space brothers and what they are, and maybe readying us to turn to them as the high entity of the land when disclosure happens, as the leading authority there with all of the benevolent answers that will explain to us what is happening globally. I assume while people are fighting over dwindling resources, and news anchors are in a frenzy to try to explain what we're seeing come upon the earth, what's in the sky, what these entities might look like. And we've been talking about Steve Quayle's brand new DVD, Lies of Men and Gods, exposing the fallen angel agenda, the genetic corruption and destruction of the human race. Daniel, you're the lead writer and the co-producer, and these last few weeks we've covered a lot of ground. I teased at the very end of last week's program, though, one of the expeditions that you and Steve and your team took during the making of this film was to Mexico, where there's video footage revealing these digs that you guys did, these archaeological digs where you did discover artifacts deep below the surface of the earth. And the video footage is there in this film for people to see. There's no dig a shallow hole, the dirt is loose, dig it up, blow on it, and call it an artifact. These are things deep below. You can see the earth itself has long since crusted and packed it only in the way that it can over lots and lots of years. You talked briefly, though, about an Egyptian connection to those artifacts. Maybe briefly recap, bring our viewers up to speed in case they missed last week. And was there evidence of DNA manipulation on those artifacts?
So just to tag on the intro there, you can add there Steve Quayle's sidekick, because Steve is so focused. I'd be taking his credit if I said this was my idea. It was his idea to go down into Mexico, fund this expedition with his own money, and to bring about this evidence. But to your point just a second ago, Look, some of this evidence cannot be denied. Okay, so let's just say.
Okay, that gives you an idea of what's coming down the pike, not only in this channel, but I'm sure this discussion is going to be radiating outward, thank goodness. And this is just the type of material that smart ass pop-up funded person, the financed guy. He's sort of like, he reminds me of some smart ass grad students that I used to run into. They're not, they're kind of like wannabe professors. They're not undergraduates, but they think they know like everything, right? He's got that fake knowingness about him. It's very irritating because I used to have to deal with these dickheads all the time, not the PKD ones, but the ones in grad school. But he's there so that you won't look into the lizard people, right? That's the code word for don't watch Sky TV or don't take seriously what Steve Quayle is saying, right? And that's the orthodoxy within the academic world, who sit back and make fun of and write. There's tons of articles, believe me, against all this stuff, but none of these people do any of the spade work, the digging themselves on it. It's all sort of armchair scholarship. But you got to give Steve Quayle and his crew credit. He's financing it out of his own pocket, from what I heard. And they went down there and dug around and did the interview. So for me, that's worth taking seriously on that level. What they found, it might be a different matter. So hang in there. We'll see what that's about. I do think, if I may end with my own hypothesis, that given the insights, and they're not original or unique to PKD, Philip K. Dick. I think he got it from the Silicon Valley people that he was getting a lot of his plot lines from. NATO, DARPA, I think, was one of his consultants, or Hewlett Packard. He was in Orange County the last 10 years of his life. That's where the real military industrial complex is, Orange County, not Silicon Valley. Orange County, in the shadow of Disneyland. You understand that? That's why they put Disneyland in there, to throw off the scent. But anyway, the point is that this idea of the mummies, the Egyptians, and there's been these King Tut mania periodically. There was one, I think, in the 79, 80, late 70s, 80s. There was King Tut went on tour, the sarcophagus and all the treasures of King Tut. They went all to the different museums. I went to the LA County Museum. I think that's where it was. And I found out that there was one in the 1920s when the tomb was supposedly discovered, or at least was made public. So you can expect to see another round of Tutmania, or maybe the current Tutmania is in the form of ufology, or quote unquote disclosure. That, because again, the Egyptians are an integral part of the story, right? Or the tale, or the mythology, or the lie, or the disinformation, however you want to put it. It's resurfaced again, right? And that it has a character of mythology. So we're going to check this out. But I do think that there is something in the observation that the mummies, the Egyptians, pharaohs, right, the pharaohic dynasties, were able to communicate through the DNA as information to subsequent bloodlines, including the ones that rule us today in 2023. That, to me, is highly plausible. And I'm saying that even more today because I spent this morning downloading and reading a lot of academic articles about reconstructing DNA and amplifying it, right? And we know about what is a Jurassic Park, about the dinosaurs, but it's possible with human beings to do it. So why not the pharaohs of the past, whose DNA were being reconstituted and amplified and passed on through the contemporary bloodlines to rule over us? That's, and maybe it is mixed with DNA. Maybe it's a moot point. I don't know. All right. But I think that's the line of inquiry that should be pursued, along with the larger procedural investigation that's going to be launched by Harvard Medical School. They're going to contain it to being a strictly medical protocol, ethical, lapse of ethics procedure. They're going to try to contain it in that. But you and I and others will say, no, 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 no. There's a whole history, millennial history of grave robbing, grave digging, as well as a modern history of resurrectionists, right? It's part of, it seems to be, again, as I said at the top of the show, a cultural universal. And so that leads to the big question, to the dean of the Harvard Medical School, and all these people at University of Pennsylvania, University of California, all the med schools are involved in this process here, this system of, they call them anatomical donations, right? That's the new euphemism, the current one in use. It's had many euphemisms used in the past, right? But that's the current one. The big question is this really about medical inquiry, medical science, or is it about life force, universal in the universe as well as in the earth? Is that what they're really? Maybe the whole organ donation and we're exposing to first year medical students to anatomy and physiology by letting them look at corpses and do dissection. Yeah, that kind of sounds nice because it's educative and it's informative and it's for supposedly a higher purpose. But what if there's a secret agenda, a hidden agenda that's behind? I think that question needs to be asked. And no one that I know, even in indie media, has posed that question. I'm doing it here today on June 18th, 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on this late, beautiful spring day as we verge into summer. And we'll continue the query. Hopefully, I'll get my DVD early next week. I'll have time to look at it, think it over. And if I can get it together in time, I'll do a live cast on this DVD, if not something else. Today, truthfully, I was going to do the Stanford University Internet Observatory and tell you that it's a compromised organization from the beginning. All the people who are supposedly patrolling the organ traffic on Facebook and on their media, and the ones who are trafficking in porno and children, who the Stanford Internet Observatory is supposedly observing and surveilling, right, and hopefully bringing to justice, they come out of that world. Surprise, surprise, surprise. But, I think my audience would get bored by such a pedestrian insight. You'd tune out after 20 minutes. Of course, I have a lot of interesting supplement. So instead, I said, I'm going to take this article that just came over the transom for me about this scandal, this huge scandal at the Harvard Medical School that really asks the big question of the end game, the political take of the Great Reset, if you will. But it's being played off as, just some sort of ghoulish activity by necromancers, vampires, lizard people, or on the other hand, it's just typically a science question. No, it's an existential human question. I leave you with that, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. It's been a pleasure being with you today. We'll see you soon, God willing. Bye.